People in Ghana's capital, Accra, know that there is an impending disaster. Yes, the city of Accra will be flooded. The people in there will be displaced. Millions of properties will be destroyed. The same can be said about the people of Volta region and Northeast. I am referring to flood events and dam spillage. The Perennial dam spillage and flood event. Who is to blame? Institutions or that poor woman in the street who doesn't know anything about flood mitigation? Who doesn't know anything about early warning signs of flood events? This is Final Voice TV. Welcome to Final Voice TV or show. Adapting to perennial flood events and dam spillage in Ghana remains a challenge. The situation requires people with expertise in disaster preparedness, environmental protection, and water resource management. With me to do the discussion on institutional adaptation to perennial flood events and dam spillage in Ghana is Mr. Al-Rauf Mahama. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles, for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Always welcome. We're looking at institutional adaptation to perennial flood events and dam spillage in Ghana. The situation is dire in our capital city, Accra, and some part of Volta region. Each year, this thing occurs. So Ghana is almost preparing itself to welcome flood events in June, July. That is when we experience much rain as a nation. What is to be done? What can be done to salvage the situation?
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles, for bringing this on board. I think not long ago, we did experience flooding issues or disaster in the Volta region. And very soon, as you rightly put it, in June, July, where the rainfall peaks, we are going to encounter a number of them.
Yeah.
This is actually a problem, tracing back 1960s, it has been happening, and little or not much has been done on issues when it comes to flooding. Actually, awaiting to receive a master's degree in environmental science and policy, and as well as offering undergraduate studies and acquiring agricultural technology certificate. This actually puts me in the right position, to be able to share my knowledge and surrounding water or flooding discourse in Ghana, for that matter, any other part of the world. Discourses around water and water management, for that matter, flooding is actually a concern to the world because access to clean water is an essential for human health, agriculture, ecosystem functioning. So if this water is mismanaged, it will actually lead to a lot of issues, including scarcity, pollution, conflict, and environmental degradation. And this impacts a lot of people in Ghana and the whole world. With my expertise in environmental science issues and policy, I think it is good that if we have a conversation around this, it's going to forestall the perennial issues which you did talk of. It is going to safeguard communities and promote sustainable development and enhance resilience to climate-related hazards, just as we experience every year in the Volta region, you rightly put it, in Accra, Upper East, Upper West. Almost every region in Ghana has this issue. And for that matter, it is good. Policies are analyzed, impact assessments are made, sustainable land management practices and conservation techniques of our water resources are actually looked at. First of all, if we want to tackle flooding issues and water management issues in Ghana, and for that matter, some African countries, we should look at what an approach we call sustainable management practices. When we say sustainable management practices, it has a lot of, acumen when it comes to this. We can look at watershed management. And when we say watershed management here, we are looking at the careful planning and managing of the use of water and water resources to reduce erosion, sedimentation, and water runoff that leads to flooding. Actually, this approach includes afforestation, for that matter, reforestation, soil conservation, measures that will enhance or ensure that the soil is stable to reduce water or ensure water retention and actually prevent the risk of flooding and other downstream water issues. Most times, most of our flooding also happens when our neighboring countries like Burkina Faso and Cote d'Ivoire kind of spill their, dams and all that. So this way, when we look at the sustainable way of doing this on our lands or our soils, when this water comes from these neighboring countries, our system or our water or our resources we have put in place will be able to contain this in order not to cause flooding. We can also look at it from the angle that we will develop early warning systems. Real-time data on rainfall, water levels, and dam capacities can be something we can look at. That is ensuring that when these things are about happening, we'll get an intel or information about when and how this thing happens. This has to do with forecasting, making projections, and alerting communities about the severity of the impending risks, and allowing timely evacuation of people around these water bodies or areas that are prone to flood. And I think this will minimize the impact this flooding causes every now and then. I think still on sustainability, we can look at community engagement and capacity building. This actually has to do with the people living with the issues, people that are affected by this, and even those who are not affected. Because for water, as we said earlier on, is a master of everything. So we use it for everything, but when it comes in the reverse or the other way around, everyone is not actually pardoned. So here, community-based initiatives such as training programs and disaster preparedness can be, run for people that stay near water bodies and around water bodies. Okay, here we are looking at participatory decision-making process. That's the indigenous or people who stay within these areas will have an alternative way of living, so that will even allow them to move out of some of these areas, because some of them stay there because that is the only place they can have their livelihood. So when they have these alternative ways of moving, and I think they will, and raising awareness about the sustainable land use practices, people stay there actually engage in activities that causes these things. So these are always, especially when it comes to the flooding along the water bodies. Then waste management, because the activities of these people, block water channels that probably water would have run through. And when these channels are blocked, it actually causes the severity of, flooding. These are the sustainable methods or ways we can use in order to curtail or curb, our perennial water issues when it comes to flooding and others. Moving on, we can also look at enhanced infrastructure resilience. This one has to do with, policies, government projects, and probably our individual, a quota we can contribute. Here we are talking of we upgrade our infrastructure. The dams we have, those ones we have built naturally, artificially built, we can enhance or let's say upgrade them. So this way it will reinforce, the reservoirs, the waterways, trying to withstand the increased water levels when they come, the pressure that this water brings. Okay, incorporating features such as overflow channels, spillways that could regulate water flow and prevent dam overstopping or failure. So here we are looking at our artificial dams we have built around Accra and the Volta region where these things are. We should upgrade them. We should look at, state-of-the-art infrastructure that are able to withstand these floods when they come. This way we'll be able to, mitigate these issues. We can also look at the natural flood management measures. Aside our artificial way of helping these issues, naturally, we can restore wetlands, creating floodplain storage areas, green infrastructure. This one is very important when we grow greens, trees, plants. When this water, this water runs on these areas, they are able to reduce the rate at which this flooding or the water runs. And this is a natural way. This will create a permeable surface for, the water to be absorbed and reduce the downstream flooding or running of the water. This is a natural flood management measure that can complement the traditional infrastructure approaches we have. And this way, the flooding or water can be managed. Moving forward, we can also look at effective disaster preparedness. What do we mean by that? Earlier on, I emphasized that there should be an education on, water issues or let's say flooding issues for people who stay close to these areas. Aside these, policies should be geared towards emergency response plans by EPA or all those concerned when it comes to water issues or environmental issues in Ghana. This includes monitoring equipments and that could track rainfall. Track the water levels and dam conditions or, water containing equipment conditions. Protocols for disseminating warning and risk signs to communities through maybe a community channel or communication channel through the community, training emergency responders, people in the community levels or areas which probably will not wait on NADMO and other related bodies that help disasters or flooding issues. Before they come, they would have actually done some ways in order to help themselves pending, the response from NADMO and other bodies that help disaster or water issues in Ghana. This will help coordinate a response to impending flooding events during emergencies and minimize the loss of life and property damage. If you actually compute the loss of, the lives we have lost when it comes to flooding issues, they are numerous. The houses and property that have actually, gone wasted because of this flooding, they are numerous. So when you kind of design early warning signs and all that for community levels, then to the regional, to the national levels, it's be a way of kind of effectively preparing, flooding issues. Then community engagement and awareness campaigns. So here, this has to do with some researches that can be done to conduct an outreach program, workshops, and public awareness campaigns to inform residents about the flood hazards I mean, some people stay, or normally when these flooding issues have gone, they forget what happens. They go back to the normalcy. So there should be that kind of outreach programs and workshop, public awareness campaign to inform the residents. I mean, taking them memory lane what has happened and its impact probably the coming, flooding events. And also this will actually empower the community to develop a disaster management community and emergencies plan. So what happened is that you let the people own this whole project. That way, they can also develop something on their own. Then the policies and other NGOs that are in to help capitalize on what already they are doing well and help. Somewhere around the world, I mean, if you look at the European countries and America and all that, there is this issue of, environmental, non-governmental NGOs that are actually pushing for water and actually environmental issues, which probably in Ghana and other African countries, we don't see that, like Greenpeace, La Posima, and other agencies. They are non-governmental agencies that actually goes to where these issues happen, cite the people, have alternatives way of putting these people so that before these issues come already, they have, ways to mitigate these things. So maybe we can be looking at that as a way, pending government interventions and all that, maybe forming these local NGOs that will look at advocacy, lobbying with government agencies, researches, and direct actions that can actually help us locally, then nationally, and regionally. These things actually will not work in isolation. These measures cannot work in isolation. It should be an integrated effort by policymakers, community leaders, EPA, and all that, all those in the, water management arena, environmental issues, climate issues. So they should be integrated. Time-tested sustainable practices, which I have mentioned, these are, practices that have been done elsewhere and they have gotten results. So if we also integrate these ones and try to work collaboratively, Ghana can eventually or effectively mitigate the risk associated with perennial down spillage and flood event that will safeguard the lives, the livelihoods, and the infrastructure in Ghana.
Yeah. So I jotted some points down, and I'm not asking for elaboration, but I keep asking myself, what is it at all that we can have effective policy and regulation development in Ghana? Because with effective policy and regulation development, we can call for non-compliance punishment for people who abuse or flout status. We can have serious inspection in these places, these flood-prone areas. So what is the problem with regard to policy and regulations in Ghana? What do you think is missing?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Ghana, I would say we have all these policies in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because there are a lot of fantastic ideas, researches that have been done about these flooding issues in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
If you take some of these universities, which we have even created from a university for sustainable whatever in Ghana, which probably my thinking was that and other, seasoned universities have done a lot of work on these things. But the fact of the matter is that these policies are resting in, government or our, documents. They are not being enforced. They are not being enforced. That, I think, is the issue. So I think this has generated the coming of these environmental, non-governmental organizations like Greenpeace and others in other areas that has actually put government and policymakers on their feet. So I can also say that we are not angry enough as people when it comes to these issues. I mean, when it happened and this disaster happened, government and people come around to help. And when we are okay, we go back to sleep, but it keep on coming. So the Ghana have all the fine policies, just like the enforcement. And then, I mean, the enforcement is the issue. And if people violate, especially when it comes to putting buildings on flood-prone areas, trying to, I mean, prevent areas where water would have passed without causing any havoc. People try to develop these areas for, I mean, their economic issues. We don't penalize these people or no regulation that is not punitive enough to prevent these things from happening. So it's the time, all is not lost, for us to look at this again. I mean, there should be a deliberate policy tackling this, and this should be a long-term thing. It shouldn't be one government, I mean, coming to do something and leaving it, and the other one to coming to probably pay a lip service and go. No, it should be a deliberate thing. There should be a plan. Maybe this year we are looking at dams. We build all dams. We are looking at channels. We are building all channels or spillways. So it should be an ongoing thing, so that this enforcement, I mean, by policies, government, will make this come to stay or stay for test of time. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. What other things do you think nation Ghana can consider? We're not treating those topics now,
Yep.
but in the future, should we come to you for similar topic with regard to institutional adaptation to perennial flood in Ghana, what other topics or subjects do you think we can focus on? Like in the case of funding or whatever, just brush it off and not just to elaborate, but because hopefully we need to continue this discussion. But what?
Sure. Because flooding issues is a long, I mean, if I say it's a very big thing, and at least the approach should be, I mean, in bits. I mean, there are a lot of issues that approaches that when you want to tackle flooding or let's say water issues in Ghana, we can tackle. As we said, policy and regulation development. I mean, our next topic will be looking at how these things, dynamics can play. I mean, research collection, which I've already said that there are a lot of researches, but as to which one tackles water or which one tackle, I mean, air, which one tackles flooding is what, I mean, we cannot tell. Then funding issues, I mean, the resources we need as a country to be able to fight this canker, it's an issue. And also the climate issues when it comes to water, I mean, flooding. It's not only the flooding or water carrying away our properties, but then what are the climate implications of, I mean, flooding and water, issues?
That is a consideration.
Yeah.
On climate change, right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. This is Mr. Al Raouf Mahama on Fana Voice TV. We discussed institutional adaptation to the perennial flood event and dam spillage in Ghana. He's professed some solutions from his point of view. This can be done. I mean, what the points he raised could be achieved. I mean, for example, when you talk about early warning systems, how much do we have to invest in early warning systems in Ghana? Early warning systems can provide information to people or settlers around these flood-prone areas for them to take early precautions.
Yeah.
And with that information, I think we can salvage the situation. Thousands of people are being displaced each year in Ghana because they lack information as to when these floods are coming or when these rains will destroy their properties. This is Final Voice TV. Mr. Raouf, thank you so much for coming on Final Voice TV today.
Thank you very much. One thing I would like to add when it comes to what I've seen from this part of the world is that when you wake up in the morning, before you even get up from bed, you see an alert on what happens to the weather. Going out. So these are some of the things we are talking of. So our telcos, our network companies should be able to incorporate these things so that even you get a message on your phone telling you that the rainfall pattern will be this. So there should be that deliberate effort by all stakeholders involved in order to, curb this menace of flooding and weather-related issues in Ghana.
Yeah, because in Europe and in America where we live, you have the weather in advance. I mean, the weather forecast in
Sure.
advance, like
That's
15 days or 20 days in advance, even a month.
very true.
So you know that in the next 2 weeks, there's going to be heavy rains. So you prepare for that. It will
Sure.
snow. So you prepare towards snow in the coming days.
Sure.
In Ghana, even for now, it's a bit okay. You see some forecast on social media,
Yeah.
but I think much is desired from the Meteo department and the government agencies who are responsible, the institutions who are responsible for some of these weather forecast and timely interventions in flood-prone areas. Thank you so much, Mr.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Sachas. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. This is Final Voice TV. This is where we draw curtains on today's show. See you
Thank
later.
you.
Dear viewer, kindly like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos.